AI has been around really for kind of many years, but it kind of took the world by storm about 2 years ago when ChatGPT arrived. And since then, it's just been evolving at a more and more faster pace. So the kind of real hot topic that I hear now is this concept of AI agents. And I don't think we're kind of talking about, undercover kind of law enforcement officers here within your business. But I'm hopeful, Dan, that you're going to kind of explain what all the fuss is about, really. So why don't we just start off with the basics? The AI landscape as a whole. Where are we, and how do AI agents fit into that? What are they, and why is everyone making such a kind of a big deal about them?
Agents have been in the world of AI, are relatively new. I mean, we've had ChatGPT, Copilot for a couple of years now. The agent side of thing has only really entered the kind of AI vocab for the past 6 months or so. The way I like to think about agents is, if you take ChatGPT and Copilot, which a lot of people are familiar with now, they fit under the kind of generalist bracket of AI. They use the knowledge of the internet or of maybe your work data, and that's how they're responding to your questions, your prompts. An agent is kind of an offshoot of that, where it's given very specific instructions on how to behave, and also very specific information that it then uses in order to perform a task. So that's the very simplistic form. Agent is an offshoot of generalist AI.
And why do you think they're called agents? Where's that term come from?
Well, you alluded to detective, and I'm not sure. Maybe it's something to do with it. So if you think a detective has to, they're trying to find a path or a line to something, a case, to solve a crime, and an agent is kind of following a very, it's not a specific path, but it is following some form of path to get to an answer or to perform a task that maybe a generalist AI isn't.
Okay. I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, there's another term as well that I hear bandied around now, and also in the same sentence as agents, and that's agentic AI. Well, what does that mean? And are agents agentic?
Well, agentic is a very new term. I don't think everyone's truly kind of coalesced on this is the actual meaning. I think I've seen different interpretations of what agentic is. If you say an agent is that kind of, it's doing a very specific task with very specific knowledge, the way you interact with that agent though is important, and how we get to agentic. You are a user interacting with an agent, so you're asking a question. You think of an agent as maybe something you deal with probably in kind of regular life. You've got a problem with your energy bill. You go onto your power supplier's website, it pops up. That is an agent.
Okay.
That's how you interact with it. You're asking it questions, you want it to perform and do something. Where we go into the agentic realm though, is we're kind of taking the person, the human, out of it then. The human isn't interacting with it. It might be an event that is then launching this agent, or
so they're kind of more autonomous and more supervised and not necessarily being used by a person.
Exactly. And they might also be communicating with each other. So an agent communicating with another agent, communicating with another, to try and get to some form of answer or to perform some task.
So going back, you mentioned about sort of virtual assistants, chat bots. We're all familiar with that, as you say, when you're trying to speak to the customer service of your bank or your utility provider. So the differences between what we've got used to there and what an AI agent would do is what?
Yes, because those have been around for, I think, remember the days
Yeah.
you call Odeon to book your cinema ticket, and you had to kind of shout the name of where you lived, or the name of the film.
Yeah.
So yeah, agents have been around for a while now. Those agents, though, are in the category of they have been constructed in a way where every input is mapped to every output. So a person has been responsible for figuring out, if somebody puts this particular message, then do this or perform this. What kind of AI has done is kind of stripped that out, because AI is really good at understanding what a person actually wants, what the context is, and then being able to then go off and do things as a result of that, maybe loop back into an agent. So we've taken the need, thanks to the AI, to have to understand the kind of very specifics of what it is that somebody needs.
And so that takes us quite nicely then into a business context. Yeah. So kind of what can these agents really do for businesses right now? You know, what is the point of them?
So a kind of very basic agent then. So I kind of an example, if your company's kind of used to using ChatGPT or Copilot or one of the others, and this kind of generic way of using AI or its responses, I guess, and the knowledge it has access to. And an agent, if you point it at specific information in your business and provide it with specific instructions, you can think of it then as a kind of a specialist in your business. It's got specialist knowledge that you've provided to it. So then we're starting to move out of the realms of a generalist, generic AI, and now we're building things that are specific to your business then. It's a kind of AI that you've built that does something unique or special to your business.
And so if you look across a business, and let's say, you know, business support functions, departments, you know, HR, kind of finance, you know, if you look at those just broadly, generically, what kind of tasks then within those departments do you think lend themselves well to being done by an agent?
Anything heavily textual based, and that's text generation or text kind of summarizing down text. That's what the AI is going to be the best at. But agent wise, it's that autonomy then. So taking something very textual, maybe a process that is textual based, but is kind of repeatable. Something that somebody has to do every month, either write text or summarize text or get information from other departments that's text based, and then perform some kind of repeatable activity. That's a sweet spot for agents.
Okay. I've got it. With our clients, you know, within financial services, what are you seeing at the moment in terms of some common use cases for agents?
Well, RFPs, a good one.
Okay.
Although our clients, or just like us really.
DDQs.
Yes. They have, when they get clients, just like us, we get clients, they ask several questions about the business. These are typically very repeatable. They're the same questions that repeat over, you know, every request that comes in. And typically what we've seen with clients, and actually just like us, is that you store a block of these answers, kind of canned answers to these questions over previous responses, or maybe you have a database with this in already. And if you focus an agent in on that knowledge and say, this is your knowledge, and you are designed to respond to RFP questions, that's been a really good match actually. Something very textual based, but something very repeatable.
So you teach the agent to be the RFP expert, response expert, and it becomes, like I say, it builds up knowledge based on your actual existing information that you've pulled together that you use to respond to these requests.
It's less teaching, because teaching is kind of already used in a very specific way in AI, and it's more like you are recruiting somebody to do this task, and you have to construct a job description. And it's all about the job description. So what are you doing? What are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to answer? It's that kind of job spec, if you like, that really informs what the AI does, and then the knowledge it has access to.
So it's interesting, isn't it? So this sounds very much like these agents are providing a supporting role for your teams, but they're not necessarily replacing people. Or are we starting to see for the first time what many have feared, where these agents actually mean that you don't necessarily need the same amount of people, and they can do replace people's roles? Or are we starting to get there now?
This is the age-old question with AI. When is it going to start replacing people? So I think we're getting closer on the kind of agent front, especially when it comes to this automation part. But it's still, to use Microsoft's word for it, it's still in the co-pilot seat.
Yeah.
It is not the captain
It's
yet.
called that for a reason.
It's called that for a reason.
Yeah.
What I would say though is it may be pushing the kind of the milestone back of when you may decide to recruit. So if you're a small startup, and you were thinking, I'm going to need to pull in, I'm going to need to employ these people to start doing all of these tasks, you may actually now be delaying that because you can automate more easily with these agents and agentic automation, but you're not. I don't think you're replacing people yet. Anyway.
All right. Well, they're welcome to replace me anyway. So, all right. Well, you mentioned Microsoft, so that's a good. I think a nice little segue there into what Microsoft are doing. So our clients, as we know, financial services, they use a lot of Microsoft technology. So tell us a bit about Microsoft's AI agent product, how it fits into the kind of wider Microsoft product set.
The Microsoft world is all about Copilot. That's their main AI. And agents is an offshoot of that. So Agent sits within the Microsoft 365 Copilot. So it is a licensable product. And it's tied closely to Copilot Studio, which is where you actually create these agents. So agents in the Microsoft world are very easy to create, actually, if you're kind of already in the Microsoft Copilot world. The agentic side of it, the automation side, where it's chatting with other agents and where it's going off and doing things, that kind of sits within their automation product as well, which is a bit more tricky to do. But very much it is just the same kind of underlying tech as Copilot. The agent side of thing is.
What do you need to get started? It sounds like it's all there kind of, and it's quite easy to access and to use. But what really do you need to get started?
So the starting point is a license.
A license. Yep.
That gives you access to the studio, and then really it is about that kind of job description which I mentioned. You have to be able to write really good descriptive prompts about who your agent is and what it's supposed to do. That is a bit of an art form, and more is more in that world. And then also you're going to want your data to be in Microsoft 365 as well, so you can then point your agent to it, and the agent then uses that as its knowledge. Now, not everyone has moved everything, all of their data, into Microsoft 365.
Sure.
So that can be a challenge, but at its kind of basics, just creating an agent, the license and the prompt.
But what level of technical skill do you need? I mean, if you look across a business, do you need to be in the IT department in that world, or are we talking really kind of just regular business users could create these things?
You don't need to be a programmer.
No.
To create these agents.
Yep.
The interface is very simple. You just got to be, it's about that prompt, which is really important. However, when we move into the agentic kind of automation side of things, that's where we start to get out of the realms of like a standard person in a business. we're then talking around kind of more development, power user, or IT department. That's going to.
So it's very easy to create a very basic one that
Yes.
you can interact with. Yeah. But when it actually, as you say, gets more agentic and it becomes more autonomous and can go off and do things, that's when you need someone with more technical skills.
Yes, which is arguably where the most value is.
Yeah.
But I should imagine this is going to evolve incredibly over the years, maybe months, where it does become easier.
You started talking about how it's very easy to create these agents. Now this starts to make me feel a little bit nervous. We work in IT. We all know about like shadow IT, which is where users can go out and obviously buy applications or develop applications without the IT department or the security department knowing anything about it. So let's start talking about some of the risks here. So at kind of a high level, again, let's stay focusing on Microsoft Copilot and their agents. How do Microsoft kind of address those security and privacy concerns that come alongside this?
So you get the same benefits or terms and conditions with Copilot Agent that you do with just the regular Copilot, which is already very strong around privacy, around what they won't store any of your data, or at least they won't use it for future models. And you're already, Microsoft calls it their trust boundary. It's the same place where you're storing your emails anyway, where Copilot sits. That's also where Copilot Agent sits. You are right, though. There is something really key, which is the Copilot system honors existing permissions. So it will only respond based on things that I have access to, that people have given me access to. Copilot Agent works slightly differently in that it can surface, under some circumstances, information that you don't necessarily want people to have access to, because it's using the kind of identity of the person who created the Copilot agent.
So let me get this straight. So let's say Bob creates an agent. Bob has let's say he's in the HR department. He has access to a load of sensitive HR information. He points the agent that information, and then Sharon gets access to the agent to use that agent, but she shouldn't have access to the knowledge and information that the agent has access to through Bob. That's a real risk.
It can be. Right. It's a bit more nuanced. But there is potential for that to happen. So it's not that you need to not use it because that risk has a high likelihood. It's just something to be aware of that you don't have to be aware of necessarily from the regular Copilot, that there's just a little bit more attention that needs to be made to what the agent has access to, and the person who's going to be interacting with that, whether they should have.
But the creator of the agent, the agent inherits their permissions?
For certain data sources. Right. That's where the nuance comes.
Okay, fine. All right. Okay, so that's risks. We talked a little bit about how you can control some of those. Let's move on. And let's just talk a little bit about the future now then. All right. So we know what agents are. We know the kind of history here. We know their use in businesses, and we know some kind of what the Microsoft products are. We know some of the risks. Now let's start talking about where we go next with these things, because yes, they've been around for years, but it does feel like early days. So one of the questions I've got is, what does this mean for software vendors more broadly? We all use lots of third-party software in our business. Are these software vendors now creating agents to go sit alongside their software? What's happening to software vendors, and what does this mean for the future of software kind of more broadly?
Well, there's two things that I see happening. One is all the software vendors are building agents. Every bit of software is going to have AI plus a bot or an agent to interact with it, and for good reasons. Right. We have use cases at Landware as an IT company that we see that we want agents for. So it's going to be prevalent across all kind of software. The other track is very interesting. It's been the introduction of MCP, which is a Model Context Protocol, which is now an open source way for software vendors to make their software available for agents to interact with. It's like a common standard, a bit like an API.
It's a bit like open banking, so you can open up bank accounts to allow...
Very much so, very much so. So lots and lots of software vendors are now opening up their software so that instead of the human interface going and doing things, an AI agent will be able to go in and manipulate, do things, perform things. That's very interesting.
So is this more then for those who create their own agents, maybe in Copilot, they can hook them into, or talk to some of these third-party software vendors and their products. So the agent can not just go off to information sources to build up knowledge and, obviously access large language models. It can actually talk to then these third-party software applications, right?
And all using natural language.
Right.
So there's no... at this point, we're talking about not even building the automation. You just describe the automation and it'll go off and do it.
Yeah,
so that's
everything talking to everything.
Yes.
Right. So Microsoft, what's coming next? Yeah, where are their Copilot agents going to go? What can we expect?
So we're already seeing from Microsoft, they are building MCPs for all of their software. So they are on that track, which makes it a lot easier from the Copilot perspective to start building those automations. So everyone's kind of heading this way. Microsoft has released Actions, which is their kind of first iteration of this actually, which is different to agents, it's different to the kind of agentic, but they are trying to come up with their way so that you don't have to build an agent, you don't have to build the agentic automation side of things. They're kind of going to provide it to you. However, I think that's going to be superseded by everything else I've just mentioned around MCP. That is the direction of travel.
Right, well, you heard it here. So I suppose the last question, right, is obviously everyone's getting very excited about these agents. Do you think this hype is deserved?
I think it is deserved.
Okay.
I've said for a long time, AI plus automation is where it gets really exciting and really interesting. And that's where we are.
So this is a significant milestone you see where AI is meeting automation. And this is a little bit what we've been waiting for, is where AI, the intelligence of it, can now go and actually do things.
Yeah.
Right.
The models will keep getting better.
Yeah.
They'll be able to provide better answers. They'll be able to summarize better. But mixing that with it then being able to go and do something, that's what we've been looking for.
Okay.